I'll just give you my perspective on what myself and my family coming to Canada meant for myself. So in Scotland, I had projected a certain persona. If you were to ask anybody in Scotland, who is Ian Don? Oh, I know Ian Don. He's got a shoe shop, and yeah, he's got a family. He's got a nice house. I know his dad. His dad is well known in the community. He goes to church. He's a Sunday school guy. Good guy, pretty upright. I mean, I made a few embarrassing mistakes in my life, but on the whole, people would say, yeah, I would think Ian Don would be a pretty respectful businessman. And then we came to Canada, and there was a transition period. So we ended up in like a community for about a year and a half, and then we ended up in Kelowna. From my story, you'll know that I came and ended up praying for Kelowna. So that was my calling. Even although we connected with a church in Kelowna, I was treated with a lot of suspicion, like, who are you? What are you doing? What's your motive? And so a lot of the feelings I got was I felt rejected, I felt not trusted, and they had no reason to trust me because they didn't know me. Ultimately, I felt betrayed, and I definitely felt isolated, but part of that I created, because in praying for Kelowna, they would pray, people doing prayer, they would show up for prayer meetings, and they'd pray about everything else except what I was supposed to be praying for. Calling was to pray for a city. And there was another couple of guys at the time, and they would spend time every morning, which was amazing. But they were loud, and it's like, I don't do loud, like I can't be part of this group. So I ended up withdrawing, basically often going up into a hill in the city and just overlooking the city and praying for the city. In a lot of that season, I couldn't stop crying. So there was a breaking down of this guy that within closed doors, I was an angry guy, and I got control by being angry. When we left Scotland, God had set up a situation where I'd done something in the church that was definitely not acceptable to the community. And so there was a rejection from where we'd come from too. So there was definitely not a going back. We had to move forward. Not that we were desiring to go back, but it would have been nice to feel the support from the church that we came from. Part of the person that I'd become in Scotland, and from my growing up, part of me feeling good about myself and about trying to get approval from my parents was I would work and I would help. I became, and into my young adult life, workaholic. I couldn't sit down. I was always working, and part of that was about finding acceptance for myself. It's one of the few addictions that people actually honor and respect. So when you work hard, people praise you up for working hard, especially when you're helping them, because they see the effort that you're putting in, the energy that you put in. So when we came to Canada, we were on a special visa initially, but part of that visa was like a volunteer visa. So I wasn't allowed to work to make any extra money for my family. Now, we did have enough money to live on, which was an amazing blessing. So we had a rental property in Scotland, and that income was what we lived on. And because I was starting to be healed, and I was starting to be less angry and more sad and weeping than angry. It's the thing that I used in Scotland to control my family. So now that that was gone and there was no fear there, I actually lost a lot of control with my teenage kids. And I think out of fear, there was too much control there to try and protect them. One of my daughters left home when she was 13, and that was probably one of the hardest things for me as a dad, because I couldn't now protect my daughter. I didn't know where she was. And so you take the praying for a city, and you take my personal life that I felt totally out of control and sad, and then you bring me praying for a city and weeping over a city. So you combine those things, and ultimately everything together just started breaking the walls that I had built to create the identity that I had in Scotland. So looking back at the time, I mean, it was dark. I didn't know if I'd ever get out of the place that I was in, and I was actually concerned for my mental health, that I would actually lose it. So looking back, there was a few spiritual principles that I believe were very real and very active in my life at that time. One was God actually loved me more than I loved myself. So he had a plan for me that I couldn't see. The breaking down of the structures I had built to make Ian Don who Ian Don was, he could see that that wasn't going to benefit me moving forward. So all these constructed protections and survival things were being stripped away. So I'm just going to say, I didn't choose brokenness. Are you kidding me? There's nothing about this that was pleasant or something that you would choose. But I think God looked at my heart and he could see that my heart was hard. That it doesn't mean to say we can't serve God and be effective in ministry during that season, because I believe I was. Like, I believe I was being obedient and doing what God had called me to do. But God saw the bigger picture, and even though I was serving him, he at the same time was serving me and creating in me a new heart, and a softer heart, and a more receptive heart to people's needs, to people's pain, to my own pain. The other part of what I've been learning from a spiritual perspective is that Jesus and God identified with us by becoming one of us, and he became broken so he could identify with our brokenness. But here's the amazing thing. In our brokenness, in my brokenness, I can identify with Jesus' brokenness. So it becomes like a blended, just an honoring and accepting of the value of the brokenness. So Jesus would say, for the joy that was set before him, he embraced the brokenness. He embraced the cross. The word is endured, but it means he embraced it. So as much as it was an unpleasant season and a dark season, I'm very grateful that God led me on this journey. It was like he created the perfect storm to bring his will about in my life, and his will for me in that season, and maybe yet is still broken and tender. And to be really honest, I had a few ministry opportunities during that season of healing, and really none of them worked out. And I'm so glad that none of them worked out, because I needed to be healed, and I would have hurt other people if I'd gone into ministry without the full healing. I mean, we're never completely healed. I'm just encouraging you guys, if you're listening and you're thinking about stepping into a healing journey, you got to do it. It's never too late to jump in and start the process. I think it's important at this point to talk about, is all brokenness good? And I'm going to say no, all brokenness is not good. Here's how I'm going to explain what I mean. So I've talked before about the whole world being under this dark spiritual force. And I've also talked about the God component, the Jesus component. So God is a jealous God, and he wants us to love him. But it's no different from the dark spiritual force. The dark spiritual force wants you to go after them and go after the created gods and the false gods. Here is the big difference. The true God and the true spirit will talk in love and in truth, and allow you the choice to choose to love him, to serve him, and to be comforted by him, which is part of the process I went through. My whole purpose of coming to Canada was to serve God. That's how I ended up being broken. So, but I chose, and I was invited, and I accepted, and I was chosen to come to Canada for this season. On the other hand, and one is for my good, one is for the Ian Don that's here now is a different Ian Don that was in Scotland, with the fake persona and how I presented to people and to the public. The dark spiritual force will actually use lies, deception, power, control, manipulation, evil. They'll want to split us up into different personalities and break us. So is that breaking good? No, that breaking is not good. That breaking always comes at a price. And often when people are broken, caused by those forces, many of them, and I think this is the point of the brokenness coming from the dark spiritual forces, they will want you to go to false comfort. So go to alcohol, drugs, stuff that will shut down the emotion, shut down the thinking, sex, power, money. Just go get rich and go make as much money as you can. Just be working for approval. That will undo your brokenness. Just forget about what's going on and go work. I'm not setting myself up as somebody special here. I'm just saying that my journey has been about actually learning what God thinks about me. Even my workaholic tendencies were brought into serving God. So it's like, God, if you call me to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm stubborn. I'm a stubborn Scot. And it took me a long time to learn that, Ian, this is not about you. This is about, if you're praying for a city, you need to take the burden and release it. But no, this is my calling, and in my broken self and my broken human self, I thought in obedience I have to keep doing this, even though it was destroying me. I remember one day, he became a good friend after this, my friend Hank. The pastor was away, we were in this church, and he preached on his yoke is easy. So God's yoke or God's burden is easy and his burden is light. And I was so mad at him because his gifting was blessing people and blessing. And I'm sitting thinking there, but his gift is so easy, like my gift is so hard, like what I'm going through is so hard. And I got up after him and said, that's rubbish, basically. And I told him why it was rubbish, because his gift was easy and mine was hard. So I should have known there was something wrong at that point, but I was quite vocal about, no, you're gifting, that's why. But I failed to look at and see that I was carrying this heavy, heavy burden that I was never meant to carry. I hadn't learned to release the burden. It's like, okay, God, this is the burden, now I give it to you. This is the burden that I see, I'm going to give it to you. This is the weight that I'm feeling, I'm going to give it to you. But no, in my insecurity, I took on the burden and it almost took me out. It almost finished me. So in the season that I was just finishing up, kind of coming out of intercession, because I told the Lord one day, I said, you know what, this is way too heavy for me. I need you to take the burden off of me. And within, it might have been a week or a couple of weeks, basically the burden was gone and I could actually feel like I could breathe and I didn't carry that weight anymore. During that time, there was a lady that came to our church, and her name was Donna McLaughlin, and she had a good Scottish name. She did a course, and basically it's what does God the Father think about you? Way Home to the Father is what it was called. And you did the course, and then she taught people, and she was amazing. She was able to include all the churches in the city. Anybody that wanted to be part of this learning could be part of it. It was called Healing Prayer. It's got a modern name now. It's called Theophostic Prayer. So if you want to check it out on the internet, it shows you counselors walking through people using the tools that we learned during that time. And basically my whole healing journey with my art and with my paintings was done basically with this one tool. And I'm going to walk through and I'm going to write it on the sheet. I'm just going to make sure I get it right. Basically, there was a team of us. So there was an intercessor, somebody that took notes, and somebody that was leading, although the leading wasn't just about one person. Often we would interchange in leading, which is a great leadership role, actually, because sometimes when you're working with a client, you can come to a place where you don't know where to go. And most of the time it's like, okay, Lord, where do you want to bring this now? But if we don't come up but the other person might get the answer. So it's not all about one person. In fact, when I was doing this prayer, I said, Lord, if at the end we always asked people, what was the most important thing that you learned today? And if it wasn't the Lord showed me, or God told me, or this is what God was showing me, if my name ever came into that equation, I said, I'm going to quit, because there's no way my name should enter into that equation. So it was all about God and the person coming for prayer. And the cool part of that thing is, if we didn't have somebody show up for prayer, we would pray for each other. And that is how I found my healing. So when the client would come in, it's like, okay, tell us what you're dealing with that you need prayer for. So that's easy. So they'll talk about a situation that's in their world right now that they're struggling with. At that point, we listen and we ask a few more questions and just glean out of them just what's going on. And then we would ask the client, so how does that make you feel? And then we go into prayer. And we say, Lord, can you show so-and-so when all this started? Can you give them a memory of the origins, of the root? Once we exposed the root, we then said, okay, tell us about the story, what happened. We're not here to blame, we're not here to accuse, we're just here to learn what happened in that season. Well, then they talk about what happened, and often there's a lot of emotion. And I think this is the key of true healing. When you get right down to the baseline, when you feel the pain that you felt before, like you open your heart and you expose your heart and your soul, and you bear the truth of what really happened. And then at that point, we let them walk through that process, and then we say, okay, Jesus, we invite you into this story, into this place where the client is at this time. Where were you? Because the Bible says that Jesus promised, he says, I will never leave you or forsake you. So he's always aware of what goes on. He doesn't come in and necessarily control everything, but he's always aware of what's going on. So then we wait, and if they get something, that's great. And then we say, so Jesus, what would you speak? What would you say about this situation? What would you say about our client? Do you have a perspective that you'd like to give? This is probably where I learned the most about God's character, because some of the stories that would come up, I would say, well, God would say this and God would say that, and God would give them like, no, you shouldn't, and it was never like that. So it really helped me solidify just the tender approach of God to the broken and his identifying with them, and he would always build up who they were, who you are as a person. You're loved, you're special, you're forgiven. A lot of the time we invite the person to forgive the people that have hurt them or have abused them or whatever it is. And then at the end we just close in prayer. We bless the people, we bless what God has done. We just make sure there's no residue of anything that's of the dark spiritual forces left behind, and we bless each other and ask for God's protection, and basically that's how we conclude a session. And the healings that I've seen over the years in that time was just amazing and so edifying, and I received that ministry for myself, and it saved my life spiritually and emotionally. Here's a question: what needs to be broken? And I'm going to say everything. And what do I mean by that? It's like everything that we come into our world with a certain toolkit of giftings. I believe we have those right from the day we're born, even before we're born. God has installed in us a set of giftings and talents. So we come into life with a whole package of, and even a calling. And I think the dark spiritual forces do their best to cover that thing, hide it, make it something else. And basically, it's only when we come and start being healed that those giftings and talents and callings start to be resurrected almost. Let's say we have a calling. Let's say I'm going to be a prophet. if we just think we're going to be a prophet in our own strength, and it's not submitted to God's authority, we're going to hurt a lot of people. And if we're not healed while we're doing prophetic ministry, we're going to hurt a lot of people too, because it'll be coming, a lot of it will be coming out of our own souls and not from the Holy Spirit. So every gift that we have, even though it comes from God, has to be submitted back to Him before we start using it. I mean, even our money, even our savings, submit it back to God. Lord, I give you control. And it's like people say, well, we have to surrender our kids. We have to surrender. I'm saying we have to. Has to be a choice. We have to submit our work, our businesses, our practices in our business. Like, if you imagine that you were in partnership with God, would we be doing business the way that we're doing it right now, or would we have a shift? So that the lordship and the surrender to Jesus and to God has to be in place for God to be our partners. Like, we can run off on our own and do our own thing, but here's what I'm going to say, and this is kind of put myself on the line here, but if we don't make Jesus Lord of a certain area and we're running on just doing it on our own, when things go wrong, then we go back and blame God for what's going on. And I don't think that's fair. I think if we're going to be in partnership with God, there's no blame there. And everything that happens is through this filter of lordship. And if we can work through that filter of lordship, then everything that comes to us, we know it's for our good. And there's a bigger picture that we don't know and we don't recognize. And that's part of the faith and the surrender and the trust in just who God is and His character. He's not out to hurt us. His plans for us are good. But if we ever get into the place where, yeah, no, God, that you're not looking after my best interest if you let this happen, then we're not submitted to the Lordship of Christ. Because I think this is such an important topic, I'm just going to kind of highlight it again and go over what I've said. So the thing that we are willing to not release and not let God in as being our partner, but we hold it and we try and fix things out on our own. And then in that specific area, I mean, you can make it up, whatever it is for you. The thing that you don't want to give to God, you're holding back, you're covering it, you're hiding it, you're the one in control of it. God's not the boss of it. God's not the Lord over this particular area in your life. So when things don't work out, but we say, but God, I love you. I'm committed to you. I'm your child, and this thing's falling apart. And they believe that God is at fault for this, but we've never surrendered that thing to God. So He's saying, why are you blaming me for the thing that you won't allow me into and be part of? Like, you're the one in control of this, so why are you complaining to me that this is not working? It's up to you if you make it work or not. But when it doesn't work out in your control, why are you blaming me for what I've done? I'm not even allowed. God won't barge into our world and take over an area that we haven't submitted to Him. So as Christians, like, we think because we love God and we've asked Him to be our Savior that He's Lord of everything. No, we hold back stuff and we don't give Him some of the things. Maybe we think we're unworthy to receive help in this area, or we know it's sinful, so we hide it. Like the first sin in the world was just hiding the thing that they should be exposing. Or this is my little pet thing that I'm going to keep for myself. I'm going to hold back this little bit because I don't want to lose it. Like there's a fear of losing something that's very precious to you, more precious than your relationship with God himself. So, yeah, this is very important. But the other side of that is, like for me, I learned to grow up to help and to work for approval. But what that spilled over to in my life was I became a rescuer and a fixer. So if I saw a need, oh, I can fix that. And without waiting and saying, Lord, what's going on here? Is this something that I need to be involved with? Or is this something that you're actually working? It's like, are they holding stuff back maybe like I am with this one thing that I'm holding on to? Maybe they're doing the same thing. So instead of letting God deal with them on his own, we go in and we fix this. Like, oh, I'm short of money. Okay, let me give you money. We're not asking if we give them money. So a lot of what we do in Christian circles is just out of our own souls, out of our own flesh, out of our own self-will. Like the whole thing about the Lord's Prayer is that Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will, not my will. My will is often out of my soul and out of my flesh. Flesh is a word that we'll explain sometime, but it's basically selfish motives is flesh. It's the old part of us that needs to die so that the new life can come in and we become a new creation. So the jumping in and fixing, we hinder sometimes God doing something in somebody else, which is really not a good idea. So even my obedience has to be submitted to the Lordship of Jesus in saying, God, is this something you want me to do? And that's a learning thing. There's no judgment here because we are all in that place of growing up and growing into him, growing into his likeness, and his likeness flowing through us. So this isn't something that happens overnight. This is stuff that happens as you mature. But if we don't mature, we keep fixing people and we keep messing up because we shortcut people hearing directly and working directly with God himself. Instead of coming alongside them and supporting them, we fix it so that they don't have to work through what they're working through with God himself. There is a scripture somewhere and it says God gave them the desires of their heart. He gave them what they wanted, but he sent a leanness into their souls. So this is all about not having a leanness in your soul, but having a fullness of God in your soul. The Lord showed me once, I was doing something and he said, Ian, he says, you're a martyr, a rescuer, and a fixer. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty strong word. So what I said to God, I said, you know what then? I'm going to not do anything unless you show me. And I stopped doing all the work and all the stuff that I was doing. I just stepped back. And it was quite amazing actually what followed. And I became, instead of this busy guy, like serving God busy, I stepped back and I was able to just take more time and relax and rest in who God had created me to be. But it was interesting, and not very long after, God gave me a dream that I was in church and this lady came in and she was just beyond herself, just freaking out. And it's like, I woke up and I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And within a couple of days, that scenario played itself out. And I was in church. I don't remember what I was in church for, but it was something fairly casual. And this lady burst in and she was freaking out. So guess what? God showed me, look, this is something you can do. So often we just run ahead and think we have to be busy all the time. And it was actually quite beautiful. And we're going on like probably 20 years down the road. And I keep meeting this couple's son who became part of a counseling thing that we did together. And it's just such a beautiful thing because when it's orchestrated by God, it's God-driven and not self-driven. And God's ways are higher, they're better than our ways. So I think for me it was, Ian, stop performing, stop working so hard, step back and don't be jumping into everything just because you can. So anyway, I hope that's encouraging for you. Maybe insightful for you, but I think Mary sitting at Jesus' feet is the better picture, and Jesus said himself that she's chosen the better way. But how do you do that? That's a bit complicated. And where's Jesus? Where's his feet? Like, what are you talking about? So that could be very confusing. But it's biblical language, so maybe I'll be able to translate that sometime, what that looks like. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking with me. If you're still there, you have a wonderful day, and God bless. Thank you.